Hello, welcome to episode 2 of Coffee Talk. My name's Elizabeth, this is my YouTube channel, and today we're going to be chatting about marriage. As some of you may know, I am married. I have been married for almost 3 years, about 2.5 years now. And when I posted on Instagram about my idea for this series, I actually got a lot of requests for me to talk about being married, about my experience being married, about how my husband and I met, all kinds of things around marriage. So I thought this might be an interesting topic to kind of chat about in a coffee talk, especially because about a week ago now, I got a call from my big sister. I have one sibling and she's my older sister. And she called me very excited, I guess 2 weeks ago now. I thought it was more recent, but yeah, I guess it's been 2 weeks. Anyway, to tell me that her boyfriend proposed and my sister said yes. So my sister is now engaged and is getting married, and I'm very, very excited for her. And I feel like just talking with her about getting engaged and getting married has kind of reminded me of the time when I got engaged and getting married. So I kind of wanted to talk about it today. My husband is texting me. He wants me to call him. So I think I explained in a Q&A a couple years ago about how Jason actually proposed to me. I'm pretty sure I did. So if I did, I will link that Q&A in the description box if you're curious about that, because I won't talk about that. But something that I think is kind of interesting to talk about is the idea of getting married, what people would consider young. So I am currently 26. I am turning 27 in a few months, and I got married when I was 24. And obviously there are lots of different views on marriage and when people should get married, depending on, where you live and your culture and all of that. But definitely where I live, which is in Toronto, and I am not a religious person. I'm an atheist. My husband is an atheist. And most of our friends and family are, if they are religious, they're not overly religious. They're not, like Orthodox in any way. So I think because of those factors, it was kind of expected that we would get married later in life. So people were pretty shocked when I told them that I was engaged. We got engaged, I guess I was 22 when we got engaged. Yeah, being 22 and getting engaged, for most people in our lives anyway, they consider that really young. And we had only been together for 8 months when Jason proposed. So I think a lot of people kind of felt like, okay, not only have you not been together for very long, however you determine what very long is, or how you know when you're ready to get married, but you're also, you are young. Oops. But there was that impression that I was young, maybe too young to get married. Obviously, there are a lot of things that go into this, and I can make another video talking about kind of how I knew that I was ready to get married, or how I knew Jason was the one for me, if that's something that's interesting to any of you. But Jason is older than me. He's 6 years older than me. So he was coming at it in a slightly different place in his life, because he was in his mid to late 20s when we met, and I was in my early 20s. It's just a pretty big change that happens over the course of your 20s, and he was definitely more prepared for that kind of settling down, finding the one and getting married sort of part of his life. When we got married, he was 30 and I was 24. So there's definitely, that age difference definitely adds to it. And I would say that I generally am mature for my age. So I think both of those had a big factor as well. And honestly, that's kind of the biggest thing for me, is that For some people, getting married when you're 24 is way too young. And there are definitely lots of people out there who have been married in their early 20s and, you know, have eventually ended up getting a divorce and have talked about how it was a big mistake and they were too young and they weren't ready, and that's totally valid. That's their experience. But there's also a lot of people who get married at 24 or younger and it works out for them, you know? And it really depends on the people involved, the circumstances. There's so many factors past how old the individual people are. And while your age can definitely impact it and can be an important thing to consider, I don't think it's quite as important as some people like to think it is. And I mean, again, that's just my experience, but I definitely feel like 24 was young. You know, looking back on it, I'm only a couple years older than that now, but you know, coming up to turning 27 and looking back to being 24, being newly 24, you know, that feels pretty young. I feel like I've experienced a lot and grown a lot in 3 years, but I was at my core the same person I am now. Whereas if I go further back, if I go back to look at, say, who I was when I was 19 or 20, that was a different person than I was when I was 24. I went through a huge change between teenage, high school me, through college me, to early 20s me. And if I had met Jason and we'd gotten engaged and married when I was 20, I don't think that would have necessarily been a good decision on either of our parts. And to be honest, I don't know if we even would have clicked in the way that we did and, you know, fallen in love and wanted to get married if we'd met at that point in my life. If I'd been 20 and he had been 26, I don't think it necessarily would have worked, because when I was 20, I was very immature, maybe not very immature for my age, but 20-year-olds in general, no offense if you're watching this and you're 20, but as you get older, you'll kind of recognize in yourself that 20 really isn't that old. It's quite young. You're still really figuring yourself out. Not that you aren't later in life, because I am still definitely figuring myself out at 26, almost 27. But in my own personal life journey, at 20, I was very immature. I had very little life experience. You know, I had just graduated from college. I was getting my first jobs, getting my first gigs, starting to have my first, you know, real adult relationships with people, with, you know, romantic relationships, as well as figuring out adult friendships and, you know, figuring out what it meant to be an adult on my own for the first time, paying my own rent, paying my own bills. And that definitely was an experience, and I'm glad that Jason and I met after I'd kind of gotten over the first main hump of that experience and kind of come to a place where I'd sort of settled into my 20s version of myself, or my early 20s version of myself. But we definitely got judgment for getting engaged so quickly, and also for getting married at what people considered a young age. And I think it's fair to be, you know, skeptical about these things. You know, the people who were concerned because they love us. They were, you know, it was a concern out of love and not, you know, a judgmental concern from what I know. But I think that it really, you know, boils down to each person's individual experience. And you get the opposite problem too. If people, you know, are dating for a really long time, my sister and her boyfriend have been dating for like 7 years or something, 8 years, something like that. And they just got engaged, and they would get judgment for not being engaged or married yet, you know, after being together for so long. So it feels like no matter what you do, you're doing it wrong. If you get engaged and married too soon, then it's too fast and you're not thinking it through enough. You're being rash. But then if you wait too long, and you know, there's no clear time when it switches over from being too soon to too late. But you know, it gets to a certain point where people are like, well, why aren't you engaged yet? Why aren't you getting married? You've been together for this long. Haven't you committed to each other yet? Sort of thing. So I feel like no matter what you do, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But in my personal life experience, you know, I don't know if it would be better if we were getting married this year instead of getting married almost 3 years ago. But I don't think there's really any drawbacks that I've seen, to be honest, to having gotten married at 24. I don't have another life experience. I only have the life I've led, so I can't really compare to anything. But marriage in general, in my experience, is full of ups and downs. It's not simple, it's not a fairy tale. Sharing your life with another person is complex because humans are complex. And as much as you love someone, it's not always going to just work perfectly 100% of the time. There's going to be push and pull. Everyone is constantly growing and changing, so you kind of have to have the flexibility within yourself and within your relationship to shift and ebb and flow as each one of you changes and grows as a human, and have that empathy and compassion for each other. And that's something that, you know, takes time to learn how to do. It takes time, I think, in every single relationship. Even if you learn generally as a concept how to do this kind of thing, it changes depending on the relationship, the specific dynamics of the relationship you're in. So those are kind of my thoughts on that. Well, my camera overheated and I had to take a break, and that indicates to me that I maybe talked for longer than 10 minutes, which means I'm gonna have a lot of editing to do. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't really have a thesis statement for this video. I guess the idea I wanna leave you with is that marriage is a journey, and it is definitely a fulfilling and worthwhile one, but it takes time and effort and commitment and work, no matter how young or old you are when you get married. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, whether you are married, have been married, have never been married, would like to get married, never want to get married. I would love to hear your thoughts on marriage in the comments below. And that's it for episode 2 of Coffee Talk. Please give this video a like if you're enjoying this series and want to see more. And be sure to leave any topic suggestions or recommendations in the comments so that I know what you want me to chat about. I'll be doing polls on my Patreon to decide which topics to cover first. So definitely go join my Patreon if you want to help to determine the topics, which ones get priority. You get access to the exclusive polls at the lowest level, which is just $1 a month. So definitely check that out if you're interested. Links are in the description box, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye, friends.